It's the Disneyland with Kids podcast, bringing you travel tips, park tidbits, and the best Southern California travel deals.
Imagine this. It's 1962 and you're looking for a lively night out in Southern California. It's after 4 p.m., so you're going to grab some friends or a date. You're going to dress up and head to the rooftop lounge of Orange County's tallest building. Welcome to the Disneyland with Kids podcast. I'm Jessica from the Happiest Blog on Earth.
And I'm Becca from this crazy adventure called life. Okay, Jessica, you said 1962, but my dream is always to be in 1955. So can we start there?
We can roll it back just a little bit. Okay, 1955 is when Disneyland first opened and also when the Disneyland Hotel first opened. So there's so much to uncover about the Disneyland Hotel, and starting with its opening date, which was October 5th, 1955. Now, I'm going to tell you something that might blow your mind.
Okay.
The opening rate was $9 a night.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, but now I have to look up what was the average rate of a hotel stay.
Yes, please do. While
Okay,
you're
I'll do
doing
that.
I'm going to tell you. Okay, so opening rate was $9 a night, and that was in 1962. I tried to see if I could pull up a rate for October 5th of this year. It wasn't available. It was already booked. Probably people just celebrating the anniversary of the Disneyland Hotel. But very close by, it was about $600 a night. So any mathematicians out there who are familiar with the inflation rate and all those things, you can tell us how much that has increased by. But $9 a night, $600 a night, holy cow. Now, the Disneyland Hotel looks totally different and has a lot of different things now than it did then. It was actually just a 2-story building that was more of a motel style as well. And, you know, if you were making a long trek from anywhere into Orange County, this was the place to stay because it really was one of the only places to stay.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get too far, though, I did look up the average rate of a hotel room in 1962, and you're not going to believe this.
Okay.
It was $10 a night approximately. So the Disneyland Hotel was right on par with most hotels, whereas now we know
Right.
that's not the case, right?
Right. Especially if we're comparing to other hotels in the area. The Disneyland Hotel happens to usually be one that's the most expensive in the area. Okay, so like I said, it looked a lot different back then. And even looking back at photos, it's hard for me to sometimes even imagine or pinpoint where things are in reference to today's Disneyland hotels. Now, I got a ton of information from the website Yesterland. I love exploring there. They have lots of pictures, lots of info, but there are a couple of books that Yesterland cited by Don Ballard. And in my opinion, Don is really the top historian and authority on the Disneyland Hotel. Anything of note, it rolls back to Don. So he has some books out as well, and we'll have those in the show notes. But he is the top tier expert there. But today, we're not going to do a full history or even a partial history, but just a few things that I found out while I was digging into the past and really unlocking the mysteries or rediscovering things you may have not known about the Disneyland Hotel.
Okay.
So let's go back to 1962. You're headed to the top of the highest building in Orange County. Now, are you ready to be amazed at 11 stories high? It's called Top of the Park at Disneyland Hotel. Have you ever heard of Top of the Park?
I've heard that term before.
Okay, so yeah.
I didn't know what it was, but I
Right, maybe you've heard of it. So 11 stories high. So getting there is part of the fun. You're going to take a ride in one of Disneyland Hotel's main attractions. This is called the Looking Glass Elevator. It's mounted outside of the hotel tower, and it has glass on every side. And this hotel or this elevator is also special because it only stops at the bottom floor and then the top floor. So you're not going to any levels in between. The whole point of this elevator is for the view. You are looking out at what is now downtown Disney, but then you are looking out toward Disneyland Park. So it's called the Looking Glass Elevator, a little nod to Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yes, I love
And
that.
you can also see the hotel's grounds, the Olympic-sized swimming pool, and off to the side, you can see the original two-story lodgings. You can also see the parking lot and other landmarks. So top of the park was a lounge and bar area. It actually closed in 1989. So like maybe possibly we could have gone. I know I didn't, but like I was alive at that point in time.
But we weren't old enough if it was a
True,
bar.
true, true.
Like, yeah, they
But you
wouldn't let
know,
us in.
we're known for getting into
Breaking
places, so.
Yeah.
So here's some other things about the Disneyland Hotel. It now has 4 towers.
Just this
So
year, starting this year.
yes, just this year. Do you know the name of the new tower?
The tower I'll never be able to afford to stay at.
Yes, that is one of the
Okay.
nicknames, and one thing that
Okay.
they did consider, I think that went away with Chapek. He was considering that, but after Iger took back over, they were like, "We're not gonna call it that. We're actually gonna call it the Discovery Tower." And this is the new Disney Vacation Club Tower that hosts the villas and studios, and that is on the most west side of the Disneyland Hotel space. So those rooms are available to book, even if you're not a Disney Vacation Club member. So 4 towers. I'm going to go over these really quick because it's so interesting. So the original tower is the Adventureland Tower currently.
Oh,
So
okay.
I always thought it was the
The Fantasyland.
Fantasy Tower.
Yeah, the Fantasy
So
Tower.
it was first called the Tower Building, then it was called the Sierra, then the Dreams, and now the Adventure. And the Adventure one is the one that had that elevator there that
Okay.
took you up to top of the park in the Looking Glass elevator. So other towers, I'm going to go through the original name all the way to the current name. So Marina then was Magic, then was Fantasy, which is what we have now. The other one, Bonita, Wonder, and Frontier. So many names, so many
Yeah.
towers. There was also different iterations of the pool. Do you know anything about any of the older pools at the Disneyland Hotel? Any images that come to mind?
Not specifically the pool. I just think of
Mhm.
the boats that they used to be able to
Okay.
drive around and
I
stuff.
remember those too. I remember thinking that was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So first they had the Olympic sized pool,
Okay,
and
yes.
looking at the photos, that was the area that is now like kind of the security entrance. So it's very hard, like I said, to imagine. Look at these photos, but we'll have the show notes where you can look at some of these old photos. And then other areas of the that they had in the pools was the Neverland pool, and that was more recent and also featured Hook's Point and the Lost Bar,
Yeah, I
which
do
is
remember
now
that.
Trader Sam's.
Yes.
They had Skull Rock in the pool, and it was really themed to kind of like a Neverland. Now the main pool is called the E-Ticket Pool,
Yes.
and that is a nod to Disneyland Past as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that name?
Yeah, so we're used to now Disneyland is so expensive that they have to include all of the rides in the admission cost, or we would probably riot. But back when it first opened, clear up until the early 80s, I wanna say, or maybe it was the late 70s, somewhere
I
around
think
there.
so. Yeah.
You had a admission price, and then you'd buy ticket books, and these ticket books would have so many, like, different tickets, and they were tiered, which Walt Disney World people can remember tiered for Fast Pass and things like that, and we even kinda have tiered when it comes to multi-experience passes right now. But the best rides, the thrill rides, the really popular rides were called e-ticket rides, and we still use that term today, like, when things open and we're like, "Here's a new e-ticket ride in this land." So, they were the fewest, the most expensive, that kinda thing, so you had your different coupons with A, B, C, D, and E.
Right. So they've named the pool now, e-ticket, that's the main pool, and I know some of the other pools in there are named after the other tickets. And we also have the monorail slides at the Disneyland Hotel pool now. So
Yes.
interesting and question for you, Becca, too. As a kid, I remember hearing the term e-ticket in reference to things that weren't theme park or Disney related. Growing up in LA, people just use that term for a lot of different things, meaning the best or the most fun or the coolest. Like that's so e-ticket. And I
I
never
I I
knew.
think that's a local thing from the
Yeah,
Disney
that's what I was
influence,
asking. Like, had you
'cause
ever heard that
no, I grew
growing
up
up?
in Idaho, and I don't remember anyone ever using that.
Yeah, so I'm interested to find out if any of our listeners heard that growing up or maybe even now and just wondered what it was because we still use that term, of course, in theme park culture. So the pools now, bunch of different areas, but those have gone through so many changes throughout the Disneyland Resort. Now, one thing that I didn't know was that the Disneyland Hotel once had an 18-hole golf course. Did you know
Yes,
this?
I did know this.
Okay, so on top of the 18-hole golf course, they also had a miniature golf course and a driving range. So each hole of the mini golf course was based on something that you would find at the park. And looking at the pictures, it really reminds me of the Storybook Land canal boats. Like when I go through that, I'm like, this would make an awesome mini golf course.
Yeah, it definitely would. I 100% like, you look at it and it looks like I think maybe the reason they changed this is because it seemed like a hotel that you would go and that would be your vacation. You never have to leave the hotel because it has so much to do between the boats, the golf, all these, the really cool theme pools. I would probably never leave the hotel. But in a way, also though, I feel like that theming kind of moved to Walt Disney World. We still have a
It
lot.
did.
Their resorts are a lot bigger. They have a lot more to do in their resorts and without even stepping foot into the park. So I still see that there.
Yes, it's fun to see that kind of move over or be at Walt Disney World, but we do not have any golfing right now at the Disneyland Hotel, but they did have some of things like I mentioned from the park. So they had like a mini Matterhorn and a Skull Rock at the miniature golf course. Just super cute. The mini golf course was there until 1978. And the putting green was actually there the longest until the 80s.
Yes.
We mentioned the monorail slides, so let's talk a little bit about the monorail because that used to go through the Disneyland Hotel, and it no longer
Yes.
does.
Which sucks, but I
Yeah,
mean,
what's up with that?
it was really cool. And I and I thought for the longest time that I was just imagining it. I was like,
Yes.
'cause, like, it doesn't do that anymore, and I'm like, I could have sworn I remember it went to the hotel, and I don't even know when that ended, and if it's just, like, a made up memory in my mind.
Right,
We've talked about this before, where because of our job, we've seen these things so much that we remember them ourselves, but
right.
I was like, "I swear it went to the hotel," and I thought I was crazy forever, but I wasn't. It really did go
I
there.
know, it really did happen, and, a lot of people have wondered why the station was moved, but really the station didn't move. So, as I had mentioned, like, the pool and the mini golf was to the east of the hotel, so were some of those older hotel buildings. So,
Mhm.
when they demolished those buildings, they actually moved the hotel to the west. So that left more space in between the hotels and the Disneyland monorail, which the station now is officially a part of downtown Disney and then takes you into Tomorrowland.
Yes, and it's
Now, the track has also been rerouted at
mhm.
times, so that also kind of feeds into the myth or the misconception that they moved the station itself.
While it no longer goes through or right up to the Disneyland Hotel, it does go through the Grand California
Right.
area, like, in between the buildings and stuff. So there is still that spot. It's just not where you can, like, feel like you're boarding it at your hotel.
Right, you cannot get off and get on. Again, that is something that they do have at Walt Disney World
Yes, at the
in
Contemporary.
Contemporary, so if you want
Yes.
to experience that, we can help you get to Walt Disney World as well.
Okay, so you've told me all this amazing stuff about the history of the Disneyland Hotel, but I have to let people know, if you're ever at Disneyland and you want to learn more of this history, a great place to do that is the Disneyland Hotel itself. If you go in the Fantasy Tower and you walk through there, there is so much history, and you'll find there's a whole wall with pictures of the original owners because Disney didn't own the hotel. It was a
Yep.
partnership. And so you'll have the story there. And then there's pictures of like, this is what it was like in this year, and this is like in that year. And they have um, even things like older Autopia vehicles in there and things like that that you can sit in and take pictures in. But there's so much history in that hotel, specifically put in the Fantasy Tower, because that's where the main lobby is, that you can learn so much there. But how can our guests stay there if they really want to?
Right. Now, I love sharing this little bit of history because I think this will impress your friends and family even more when you come and stay at the Disneyland Hotel. Out
Okay.
of the three Disney properties, it is my family's favorite and the one we return to most often. So you can book a stay at the Disneyland Hotel or any of the Disney owned properties through our link disneylandwithkids.info/book, and you're going to receive the best rates possible and lower prices on those Disneyland tickets. Now, while staying at the Disneyland Hotel, you will also have access to early entry, which is a great perk. And even if you're not staying at the hotel, you can still explore the grounds and you can explore those historical artifacts as well as dining on site. But sorry, no top of the park.
Yeah, definitely. And if you prefer to speak to someone live to get questions answered while you book, you can call 855 Getaway, but just make sure that you tell them you want the Disneyland Kids exclusive pricing, because we do have exclusive deals worked out for our followers in our community. So be sure to do that.
Now, before we wrap up today, I have a few more tidbits for you about that original tower that housed the looking glass elevator.
Okay.
Okay, have you ever seen an old picture of the Disneyland Hotel and it says Hotel Disneyland?
Yes.
Yes.
Inside of the Disneyland Hotel, I've seen that
Okay.
picture.
So it was never called Hotel Disneyland, but the way that that tower was built was the elevator was more toward the left-hand side. It wasn't in the center. So they had no choice but to put up the sign as Hotel Disneyland because that's just the way it fit. Now, when they did expand that building, they were able to switch the words and make it correct as the Disneyland Hotel.
Awesome. And of course, the Disneyland Hotel, that's where we get that sign that we think of when we think of the
That
old sign.
iconic,
Yeah.
the font and everything.
Mhm.
It's just and it's so interesting because in my head, I always pictured, like we said, the Fantasy Tower being the original, and it really throws everything off to me to think that what I thought was the Disneyland Hotel actually faced a completely different direction, and all the changes we've seen, especially with Downtown Disney and, the streets being renamed and the overpass and all the things, it's just totally different. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed these tidbits about the Disneyland Hotel and Disney Parks history. We'll see you real soon at Disneyland.